And the other big statement you made was on policy by Jhatka. Now, obviously, you've already identified demonetization and the GST rollout as two examples of that. What we don't actually know is your view on the new farm laws. And I ask you this at a time when I've spent an entire day with the farmers on the road. I'm not an economist. I think a lot of lay people in India just want to understand, is this good for farmers? Is this pro-reform or is it pro-crony capitalism? There's a sense, and those opposing it certainly believe that this is going to further concentrate capital in the hands of a few. Harish Damodaran has said that it is one more evidence of India moving towards conglomerate capitalism from entrepreneurial capitalism, which I thought was a very interesting phrase. And I think that you have expressed similar reservations about the concentration of power and capital in the hands of very few, big oligarchs almost. So when you look at the farm laws, how do you look at them, Professor Rajan?
First, I would like to say that the tendency towards concentration has been with us for some time. In 2008, 2009, I made a speech to the Bombay Chamber of Commerce, wondering whether India was becoming an oligarchy. And that comes from the fact that our corporations have enormous sway over our institutions. Certainly, some corporations seem to have that. And it seems to persist government after government. And the question is, can we build strong enough institutions to resist that? One example is the Competition Commission of India, which a government created. Obviously, that was creditable. The question is, how much power does it have to reject the concentration of power, or will it find reasons to say, oh, yes, this is okay, that is okay, and something else is okay? So we need to monitor these institutions and make sure they are working as advertised. And that, I think, is one place where we're doing reasonably well. We certainly have a engaged academia, for example. I've been reading some tracts by lawyers and legal scholars on the performance of the Supreme Court. And that, now is using a lot more data to understand how the judgments are going, what the time delay in judgments are, et cetera, so that we are trying to hold them up to a higher standard. So I think those are good things in a trend which we need to really deal with. On the Farm Bill itself, I'm not an expert on farm law. I do understand that the basic debate is on whether there will be more competition for the farmers' produce or less. Mm-hmm. And the ones who say that there will be less basically argue that once you've done away with the mandis, you've not got enough business in the mandis, they will collapse. When they collapse, the farmer will have no choice but to go to the conglomerate buyers, to the multinational buyers, etc., which will squeeze the farmer. That's the argument against. Slipped into that argument is that the farmer will not get minimum support prices because somehow that's connected to this whole structure. Now, the pro argument, which a lot of economists have been making for some time, is that if those structures are useful, they will stand regardless, and the farmer will have more choice. Now, ideally, what you would want to do is essentially ensure both structures can compete with each other, support the mandi, at the same time ensure that there is competition from these other sources, and then see whether the farmer is getting a better deal. So I've said before, we sometimes do reform as a fire and forget missile. We sort of shoot it and think all is done. No, you need to keep looking at the reform, see how it works, and deal with the problems that emerge. So if, for example, the mandis start closing down, start thinking about whether you need to have some subsidy for some time in the mandis till you ensure that the situation is competitive. How do you compensate the state governments for the revenue lost in the mandis? That's something to think about. I think the fair criticism is that some of these reforms are undertaken. We've spent many years talking about them. How would it be? Why would it be a problem to just consult a little more and find out something that is mutually acceptable? Because in that consultation, you may actually find a better way forward. So that's really the concern, that sometimes, again, we're doing this without the inputs from the relevant parties, and that may take us down the wrong path. But even if we did that, I would still say it's not over yet. Monitor, see what's happening, and if the critics have a point, adjust. And that we need to keep doing. And last point, why is it that we do it this way? Well, because policy has been so centralized. India cannot be run from the center. India, you need the center for an overall vision, but then the details have to be worked out and managed on a much more decentralized basis.
Well,
I don't think we, on the economic front, the overall vision is, the coherence of the overall vision is not there. But we have a lot of policy emanating from the center without the kind of buy-in or the decentralization that is necessary.
Well, that was going to be my response, that, irrespective of where you stand on the law itself, when you have thousands of men and women on the streets for 6 days in a row who are the backbone of your agricultural sector, you do find a way to create consensus and dialogue. The second question I had on the farm laws as a follow-up was that there has been a suggestion that if the government is committed to a minimum support price, which at least rhetorically the Prime Minister downwards have said that there will be no change in the MSP, then one model that has been suggested is that you ensure that private players do not actually buy at a price below the MSP for that year, and that you can easily work that into the law. So yes, if private players are willing to pay more, hurrah for the farmers, but at least you set a threshold and you say no trading below this level. Is that not a way to marry what you were calling the encouragement of competition, but also, in a way, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
I think there are a variety of fixes that are possible, and again, taking the critics on board and ensuring that the intent of the reform. Again, I don't think the government intends to hurt the farmers through this reform. If that is the case, then by all means, a dialogue would be useful, and there may be some suggestions which can be implemented, which would assuage all sides and make this a better reform. Certainly, what you want really is stronger incomes for the farmers. That is the intent. And the intent can be achieved both by more competition, but also if you have set a minimum support price, by all means enforce it where you can.
Are you leaning towards seeing this as a reformist measure? You've had, you have a caveat that, policy does not have to be formulated in this way. There can be a consensus orientation towards policy, and I get that. But that's more how the policy is executed or enforced per se. Do you lean towards seeing this as a pro-reform move, or do you believe that nowhere in the world actually has the farmer not been subsidized in some way or the other?
No, look, there are two different things. One is competition for the farmers' produce, and the other is subsidy. Many farmers in India don't benefit from the minimum support prices because procurement is not done in their particular neighborhood or in their particular state. So more competition for their produce from all, rather than them being forced to go to one mandi and to sell there, in theory is a good thing. Now, the concern that people have is if that sole source of competition, the mandi, collapses, and then you're subject to all these other buyers who have no constraint on what price they pay. You can do both, and that means a gentle transition. And at some point, if the mandi doesn't really serve a purpose because there's a huge amount of competition for the farmer, multinationals are competing with corporates, are competing with traditional traders, then at that point you can let it go. So I think you don't need to take a step in the dark. You can work with the current structures, but add the competition as something over and above what is there. So how do you do that? How do you structure that? That's worth sort of discussing. But more competition, I would say, is undoubtedly a good thing for the farmer.